This is Work University, and I'm Annalisa Felix. This is where I talk to people from various employment backgrounds and get a better idea of what their job is really like. If you're just graduating or looking to change careers, you're in the right place. Now let's get to it. Hello, today I am talking with Phil, who is a corporate pilot. Phil, thank you for letting me talk to you today.
Hi, no problem. My pleasure.
So tell me what it's like to be a corporate pilot. What is your day-to-day?
Uh, uh, my day-to-day is basically I work on call. I am charter of the corporate pilot, and it is a lot of, in my particular case, sitting around waiting for the phone call. And we have a time period during the day, only so many hours I could be on call, and then I'm off the rest of the time. So I can go weeks, I can go days, or it could be every day that I'm being worked or have long periods of not working.
So does that mean you work for yourself?
No, I'm on salary, and you just sit and you wait for somebody to call you and say, hey, I want to go somewhere, because my airplane is basically like a rental car. Somebody calls up, and it could be that the airplane they own is broken and they need to use an airplane, or there's card programs where people put money into a program and they could use $100,000, let's say, and they could use up to that renting different airplanes. And there's just all kinds of different ways you could get into the airplane or the program. And I'm just sitting around. My company and other companies work that out, but I just sit on call waiting for them to call me. And then wherever they want to go, we take them.
So
Pretty easy on my part.
so do you just fly one plane, or do you have different types of planes that you fly? Is there a fleet of them that you have to choose from, or what's available? How does that work?
I myself fly two airplanes, but you can fly one airplane, or I think my company the most is only two airplanes per person, just to keep it on the safe side. You don't want to be responsible for too many airplanes. But I fly what's called a G5 and the G3.
And how many people do those sit comfortably?
I think I know this sounds bad on my part, but the G5 is 19 and the G3, I want to say, is 14.
Okay, so that's kind of big. And so do you have other employees there with you? Then if it's 19 people, then you must have like service on the plane.
It depends. I mean, different rules with the FAA make it happen, but we always have a flight attendant when it's a chartered flight.
Mm-hmm.
We always have a flight attendant or a cabin server, as they're called,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's another pilot. But if it's, let's just say the owner of the airplane is flying the airplane, which means we're taking them, they may or may not want a cabin server. So it might just be them and the pilot,
So it
which
just
happens
depends.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, so with your company, you don't have any set amount of hours. Like you can't say, oh, well, I'm only going to work this week and next week. It could just be job to job.
Basically, we are given, you have so many days off per month or per quarter, and you basically bid them. In my case, and
Mm-hmm.
this is probably the majority of companies, and they're what they're called hard days off, and it could be anywhere from 8 days a month to maybe 10 days a month. It could be you work 18 days in a row and you have 10 days off, or 6 days in a row and you have 4 days off, or it could be you or if you're not a charter company, you just are off when nobody's flying, and
Mm-hmm.
you see your schedule far out in advance, so you can see your days off. But as opposed to saying, I want to have this weekend off, I would actually either have to work it out somehow in advance, or take that probably as a vacation day.
So who is responsible for booking your hotels and things like that? Is that you, or is that part of the company's responsibility, administrative?
Uh, in my particular case, it's the pilots, and it's usually whoever is going to be what they call the pilot in command. You have a pilot in command and a second in command, and we're both rated exactly the same and alternate on who's going to be in charge. But it's usually the pilot in command, and we when you fly with the same people again, you realize, hey, I like Marriott. Okay, we'll get all Marriott hotels.
Mhm.
So you'll find a Marriott hotel, and you're given a certain price range. Say you want to stay under, $200 a night. So
Mhm.
you'll find a Marriott that gives you under $200 a night, or 150, or you like Marriott that are a certain brand, and you go and you get those hotels, or
Mhm.
Hilton.
Okay. So did you ever work commercial airlines?
If you mean, because we're all commercial pilots, if
Oh,
you
okay.
mean with the airline,
The airlines.
no,
Yes,
I
that's what I
never
mean.
have. Yes.
Okay.
Uh
So
huh.
how did you get into being a pilot? Is it something that you took out of high school? Did you always think you were going to be a pilot, or how did that happen?
I always knew I wanted to be a pilot. I didn't always go right away to be a pilot. I had joined the Air Force a couple of years out of high school. I went to college for a little bit. Really wasn't into it. Joined the Air Force. Found a job where I could fly in the back of an airplane, doing some really cool military stuff. But then I realized that the pilots, when we landed, they were done working, and we had to keep working, doing stuff. So I was like, man, I'm doing it the wrong way. And I went back to school, went to a aviation program, University of Nebraska, Omaha,
Hmm.
and started flying there, taking the flying classes. And there's a curriculum for aviation only people, but you don't have to do that. But that's just what I did. You can still go to the college and take the flying courses, but do a biology degree or a math degree. The flying courses are totally separate and do not depend on the degree. I did that. Graduated there with my commercial license, which really means I could just fly for a living. Doesn't mean you can get a job. And this was in the late '90s. Moved to Phoenix because I knew they had a lot of flight schools there, and the weather was good, and I'd be flying more. Which, when you're beginning, you want to build hours. You just anything to build hours. And flight instructor for about a year, maybe a little bit more than a year. Got a job flying for a little company, flying a Metroliner, which is a turboprop airplane of 19 people. In my particular case, what I went to do was for a contract for the Navy, and flew Navy people from out of San Diego to different islands off of California, San Clemente, and back. And then when we lost that contract, I flew a NASCAR team around for a little bit, and I flew with this company for about a year. Got hired flying beach jets uh, back in Nebraska, and flew there for 2 years. Got hired at a company out of California flying the Hawker 800 XP and the beach jets.
So how
Did
many
that
people do
for eight
those
years.
carry?
They're about 8 people, both of them, both
Okay.
the beach jet and Hawker, 8 people.
Wow. And so when you say you want to build your hours, why do you want to build your hours? Does that show the people who are hiring you how experienced you are, and does that get discussed a lot?
Yes and no. It's because of federal regulations and insurance, and the regulations say it's 200. Well, it's changed now. When I was doing it, 250 hours said you could fly any airplane you want for a living for money. You didn't have to. You could go out and get a job with 250 flight hours. Then it depends on that's total time. Then you need your twin engine time, which is airplanes with more than one engine. Um, and this is real rough. And then you want to get turbine time, which is either turboprop or jet. So then you get 1,500 hours and you become an air transport pilot, which is the highest of the ratings. Then you pretty much could do any job, but it's mostly run by insurance and regulations. And the more time you have, um, it doesn't mean that you're going to get the job. Um, because once you get like your ATP, and let's just say you're around um, for your resume, once you have so much either turboprop or jet time, and I'm going to say throw out a number 1,500, it doesn't really matter. Now they're looking at what your experience is and where have you been, what kind of weather have you flown, how long have you been doing, like if you were getting hired at a charter company, how long have you been doing charter? How many hours have you had as the boss of the airplane, the PIC? And that's about it. I've honestly never had anybody look at my logbook. It's always the resume. And I guess in my particular instance in charter world, talking to the person, you could already tell that they know what they're doing.
Mhm.
And it seems to be if you're lying on your resume, you pretty much can be called out right away. People know, and there are some people who I've flown with. I'm like, I think they've maybe said some stuff on the resume that wasn't true. But for the most part, in my particular case and on my airplanes, it really has never been a big deal. And a lot of companies hire from within. If you start out in the let's just say the airplanes you don't need that much experience, or the beginner planes, your turboprops, your light jets, you'll move up in the company if they have the bigger airplane. So they already know what your experience is, and they've trained you to their standards. Now the
Mhm.
airline, I don't really know how that all works, and I know they look at logbooks real bad, and they go through it with I'm hoping a fine-tooth comb, but I just don't know. I've never applied there.
Mhm. So to keep your skills sharp, do you have to, like, per week, do any kind of simulations or studying, or I'm sure you have to be up on regulations. How does that work?
We do, and there's some self-studying involved, but every 6 months you go through the simulator and get rechecked on basically everything. Doing instrument approaches, circling approaches, you're simulating low visibility takeoff and landings, and you do this with having emergencies,
Mhm.
an engine out or hydraulics. So we do that every 6 months for recurrent training. And then we do in-house training, what we call for our standard operating procedures, and we do what the company policies are, what the FAA has agreed, and the company agreed, what we can and cannot do, what airplanes we could fly into, and basically the rules of the air for my company or anybody's company. You will do that. So basically, I guess within the year, you're in some kind of training 3 times at least by regulation. Of course, you're supposed to do some self-studying if a rule changes or they do something different with instrument approaches or the way something is supposed to happen. You pretty much, the company will either forward you the new thing of the FAA, or nowadays we get email alerts from the FAA, and then you should know that. And then we'll all go over everything again when we do our annual training in-house.
Okay, so then that leads me to ask, do you have some kind of certification you have to keep current?
Not really. I mean, we're supposed to do also. I mean, I should go. There's a whole bunch of things we have to do. We have to have so many night landings in the type of airplane we're flying. We have to have so many low visibility takeoff and landings. But what it's called, we call them by the rate. There are 293, 299 checks, 297, which are covered under the rate. And that's basically all it is. You go to like a company that does specific training,
Mm-hmm.
and they say yes, he has been, and it's the FAA's gone and given him the blessing. Everybody's checked out, and we go there, and these companies are all they're for is making sure everybody's current and certified,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And then it's sent to my company, and I really don't get any paperwork because if they know I'm certified, I might get a little certificate in the mail sometime, but it's pretty much taken care of for us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to do really anything different.
Okay. So going back to emergencies, have you ever been in a situation where it's been like a scary situation? And obviously you made it
Um,
through, but like
right. No, not really. I spilled my coffee one time on my pants, but that was about it. Um, you don't. I've shut down an engine in flight because of low oil pressure, but it sounds like a cliche, but you do it so much in training, it's not a big deal. And
hmm
when you're already in the air, it's not a big deal.
hmm
Sure, there are very scary things that can happen. It just never happened to me.
hmm Okay. Now, through your career, you've had a lot of different positions and flown different conditions and different types of planes. Are there any obstacles you faced getting into, say, certain areas that you wanted to get into, or anything that you had to face while getting to where you are now?
I would say money, if you pay for your own training, is
Mm,
by far the largest obstacle. And it was expensive for me back in the 90s. I hear now it's even more expensive. I've talked to people who went to other universities like Embry-Riddle, which is basically a private school for aviation. It's very expensive. And it's not like you're going to get a job any faster if you go to a prestigious school than if you go to a mom and pop flight school,
hmm
because everybody has to do the same. But they're so much more in debt and they really, I could see why, and they can't fly anymore because they have to pay these bills up back. Um, Other obstacles have been sometimes the company goes under, or they decide to sell an airplane, and then you're suddenly without a job. That has happened to me back in during the recession. Several airplanes were either repossessed or they sold them, and I was laid off in 2010.
hmm
Um, I was lucky to find another job right away, but that's basically the obstacles. And maybe you when you go with the interview for a place, they already know who they want to hire, but they go through the motions of doing the interview, and you don't know what's happening. I mean, other than that, I really don't know of any other obstacles or situations that have kept me from getting a job. I feel kind of lucky that way.
hmm
So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I have not been affected by that. I hope.
Now, my last question is, what advice would you give to somebody that is in high school, a younger person, maybe, telling you, hey, I want to be a airplane pilot. What should I do? What advice would you give them?
I would definitely say, I know not all careers need a college education. I would say definitely get a degree. Do not get it in aviation, but get a degree. Because if you get an aviation job, and like I said, you get laid off, it would be great to have a backup career or
hmm
something else you could fall back on.
hmm
Because if you get an aviation degree, you're stuck in aviation. Accounting would be great. Getting a law degree would be even better. But other than that, and be prepared to be poor for the first few years because it is a very low paying career. Yeah, it's all fancy and stuff, but it's not till you get into you know, you're well into your career. You won't be poor the whole time, but your first couple jobs are probably going to be your lowest paying jobs ever. Flight instructing, working the little freight job, your first charter gig, if you do charter. Airlines, I don't know. That's a whole other ball game that I don't know anything really about and don't know all that much about.
hmm
But what I know is I got paid my first job as flight instructing. I was making $15,000 a year. It was bad. It was still bad. And living in San Diego. And I mean, you're poverty. You're below poverty. And I had to have my parents help me, which 2 years prior, I was making good money in another job.
hmm
But I chose to do the aviation. Was it worth it? I think so. And would I do it again? Absolutely. But I would definitely say what I do tell people is get a degree in something other than aviation to fall back on.
hmm So that's some valuable information. Thank you, Phil. I appreciate you sharing your experience with me today. Good stuff.
Oh, thank you. No problem. Glad I could help.
Thank you for listening. I hope you liked this episode. If you have a particular job you'd like me to look into, send me an email at workuniversityforyou@gmail.com. That's workuniversity, the number 4, the letter U at gmail.com. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.